Bom dia, Portugal!
In Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GMP morning show. Featured guests will come and they will blow your mind. The audience will do so in kind. The little vanity mixed with some insanity on the morning show with GMP.
Good morning, Portugal, and I'd like to welcome you to another fantastic day.
Hey, Gumpers.
Hola, bon dia, alegria. Munson here with the Good Morning Portugal show, live stream and podcast. And who's that in the studio with me? Andy Klein is here, everybody. The amazing creative man, the creative input on our Englishman, Irishman, and whoever else wants to join us in the bar here in Portugal, it would seem. Andy, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing just great.
Great. Lovely to have you here. We are, of course, filming a little bit later on today. Well, after the show, actually, we're hot-footing it, aren't we, to Caldas da Rainha, where we'll be in the company of Bobby O'Reilly and our host today, Mama Anila of Flavors of India. So are you a fan of Indian food?
Yes, I like it very much.
Good. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Looking
All
forward
right.
to this.
Yeah, we should do a little bit of filming as well, of course, as well as eat.
Yeah, eat.
Okay.
Eat film.
I understand it's an unlimited buffet, so I think that's going to suit me, you, and Bobby extraordinarily well this morning. So, any Gumpers heading that way, give us a shout out in the chat, and looking forward to hanging out with quite the vast array, a riot of Gumpers a little bit later on in Caldas da Rainha. How are you this morning? Who's in? Have we got a tea duck this morning, or have we got a tea duck vacuum? We've certainly got Deagle. How are you, mate? Bon dia, Carl, says Deagle. And the Gumpers, of course, from a nippy Belfast at -3 there. I do complain about the weather here. It's peeing down at the moment. Kash outside. But it's not -3. I think it's about 14, very mild 14 degrees outside. Nothing like Belfast at -3. 8 o'clock this morning to hit a high of 0 today. Have you been to Belfast? Do you know Belfast?
I have not been.
Oh,
Lola's
okay.
been to Belfast.
Right. I have been there in the past and enjoyed it very much. We'll come back to your comments in a moment, Deagle. Trouble and strife, I think, over there in Belfast. Coach Turner's in with the God Squad tip of the day, and he'll be with us, of course, on Friday. And Thursday, tomorrow, we've got Carl Hyde, the English gentleman in Lisbon, who helps people find rentals and purchases in that area with the agency. And, of course, our American in the Algarve, Veronica, joining us as well. Looking forward to that tomorrow. James also in this morning. Bobby's just popped in as well to say, morning, setting off from Araweira soon. See you later. Yes, absolutely. And morning, Andy, from Bobby to you as well there. By Andy in, Antonio Barbosa. More from Antonio. Antonio has popped onto GMP VIP this morning or late last night. And we might have a little go at this. It's almost like a bingo card. The 24 must things to do in Portugal. And we can see, I was looking at it, Andy, and I haven't done, to my embarrassment, haven't done very many of them. Baddies in. Hola, bon dia, alegria. Making sure I get down to the business of returning to Portugal. Yes, it's getting down to business this morning. More about that in just a moment as well. And Jacqueline Branco, good morning to you. Good morning. Have a great day. Yes, we're heading over towards you. If we're going to Caldas da Rainha, of course, from here on the Silver Coast part that is known as San Martinho de Porto, heading over your way. Good morning to you and everyone else in Gueiras this morning on the Silver Coast, a bit further south than us. Right, yes, this morning, getting down to business, we've got the wonderful Raquel from Lighthouse Consulting. And I noticed actually in the Portugal news, there is a piece about Portugal's green receipts described as a innovative strategy by the OECD. What would they know? I think Raquel knows a whole lot more about green receipts. And will be, if you're thinking of starting a business here in Portugal, and of course, you'll have to pay social security contributions, the sequencing of that and green receipts versus LDA, setting up a company. Raquel talking all about that this morning. And And we've also got Stephen Whyte joining us, who is offering an investment opportunity based on property redevelopment here in Portugal, offering 12%. I think he said guaranteed, didn't he, Andy?
Guaranteed.
I'm not sure how he makes such a guarantee.
I thought I heard guaranteed.
Yeah.
And that made my ears perk up a little bit.
He often has that happen. with people, too good to be true, you know, and all this sort of stuff. If it sounds like it's too good to be true, it probably is. Well, we'll ask him. We can quiz him directly. He's very robust when it comes to a bit of questioning and being very transparent and authentic with how he goes about business. In my experience, not that I've invested with him or had a 12% return yet. But we'll ask him about that. And of course, you must make your own mind up about whether you think that's a good deal or not. But he's here to talk about that at 9:30 this morning. Also joining us, Jackie from Xat Sports Group, who will be here in a few minutes, actually, before 9 o'clock. Good morning. What's with the thunder? Now, I've already apologized to you, Jack Polly, who's here on the Silver Coast up from the Algarve, about our weather. I don't know what else to say. I thought that was at the end of it when I apologized the other day. Then subsequently, we've had lightning and thunder and absolutely peeing it down. So my bad. Well, it's not my fault. Is it? But I do feel a little bit responsible for you coming to the Silver Coast and me going on about it so much and how brilliant it is, and then you getting soggy and you've forgotten your wellies as well. Says James whenever he hears the name Jack Polly. Right, so as long as you try pastéis de nata in 2024, you're set to go. Well, I've already done that. I've already done that a few times this year, Antonio. Don't tire of those lovely pastries. So we'll have a look at that list in just a moment after we've had a rewound back to Deagle's messages. Apparently a full day of industrial action, not unlike Portugal then, although we don't have full days of industrial action. There are smatterings. Have you noticed this, Andy? Get the train drivers, don't we? Teachers, some government workers, journalists even recently.
Oh yeah, the train infrastructure people last couple of weeks.
Oh, well, they were on strike, were they?
Yeah, not the ones who drive the trains or
no, that was a different day,
but the ones who, I guess, keep the tracks working.
Yes, which is quite important, of course.
Yes, it is quite important.
You're quite an avid user, aren't you, of public transport here in Portugal? Mainly trains or buses or a mixture?
A mixture, but mainly trains.
Okay, what do you, when they're not on strike, what do you make of the train system here?
I think it's brilliant.
Right.
I mean, I've been on trains in many parts of the world. I've been on the fastest train in the world in China.
Have you?
From Beijing to
it's not Japanese then. It's not the bullet train. It's
the Chinese claim theirs is fastest, and it was pretty fast.
I'm not going to argue with that publicly.
I mean, do I really know for sure? I don't know. I know what I was told, but that was a brilliant train. The thing about that train that was actually hilarious. So we're going almost the entire length, Beijing to out west, because we were on our way to Tibet.
How amazing!
And this thing is a high-tech marvel. It even shows you the speed. It's got this little, screen that you can watch the speed of the train, and it is impossibly fast.
Wow!
But I mean, just like China, you go into the toilet on the train.
What?
This is the highest tech train in the world, and it's a squatty.
Squatty. I think we know what you mean. But it's not a hole in the floor though, is it?
Well, I mean, yes, it's a higher tech looking hole in the floor, but yes, it is a hole in the floor.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Toilet culture. I didn't know we were going this way this morning, I've got to say. But they might think to us, there might be two Chinese guys on a live stream this morning in China saying to each other, I use their trains. And you know what those Westerners are like? They hold on to their waste products. They carry them up and down the track. Someone else has to come and, although I don't know actually if that's true or not. On an aeroplane, I'm imagining on the fastest trains in the West, as it were. I don't know if I should be having this conversation. The deeper I'm going into it, as it were, the more I'm regretting this. But I get the feeling that it's not discharged onto the track in this country and is collected and then disposed of responsibly.
Now, it is discharged onto the track in Russia. I've been on the Trans-Siberian. And it's really
the guide to toilet systems of the trains of the world. Thank you, Andy.
You bet. I don't need to describe it any more than that.
Okay, but
it is a little frightening, blowback.
Especially if you're stood by the track.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
All right, let's move on, shall we? Like a Chinese high-speed train. Let's get out of here and this conversational cul-de-sac. So strikes tomorrow in Belfast. Expect to be the biggest strike in Northern Ireland ever. Government won't give pay rises because of no storm. You haven't had a government there for a really long time, as I understand it. And DUP, or an effective working one anyway, the DUP are boycotting Stormont. That's their parliament, I believe. So no devolved government. We're being run by London, who are too busy looking after everything to worry about us. Yeah, I think they're quite busy as well, aren't they, in London? Even though in December they said 3.6 billion was set aside for Northern Ireland. Well, if they just drop that off, I'm sure you're very capable, Deagle, and your friends to just distribute that responsibly. 3.6 billion could be a great time to be had in Belfast if that dough turns up over there. Bon dia Gumpers then from Coach Turner. The cold weather is still here in the UK. Yeah, I heard about that on I was listening to Jazz FM this morning. You're hoping for it to go back to normal, I think, in the UK, as in wet and rainy rather than blustery and stormy and wet. The cold weather is still here then in the UK, according to Coach Turner. No snow yet where I am. It won't stop our walk to the coffee shop. That's the spirit this morning, though there is bad news. They now sell pastel de nata. That is not bad news. That's great news. It'll be down to you and your own willpower to manage that, Coach Turner. And your God's God tip of the day, I've been encouraging you to walk with a friend as a way to motivate yourself. Now, yeah, the first thing you have to do with that, of course, is have a friend. But personally, I really enjoy the meditative experience of a good walk on my own. So if you are a Billy No Mates, you can still enjoy a walk and enjoy the meditative aspect of that. Nothing worse than wanting a meditative walk and a friend rabbiting on in your ear, right? When you're trying.
Yeah, if that's what you want, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I find that I get lost in my thoughts and the time flies by. Before I know it, I've been out for an hour or more. Any problems have been put into perspective and I'm feeling relaxed and happy. Well, I'm sure there'll be a waiting list for that sort of experience there, Coach Turner. Excellent. See you on Friday as well. So put your shoes on, step out of the door and get a bit of a sweat on. I think that's quite important as well, as to break into a sweat. And who doesn't like to get a bit of a sweat on the first thing in the morning? How are you doing this year? We've talked before, haven't we, about fitness and diet and so on. And
Yeah,
have you sort of resolved to do anything differently this year, or are you carrying on with the routine that you had in 23?
Well, I started with a outdoor routine. There's what we call a park course at the local park, which is exercise equipment that's spaced out, and I was doing that for the first part of last year. And then I joined a gym. There's a gym in our building. And
that's
so
handy.
I joined that and I try to get down there every day. Doesn't always happen every day, but I try.
No, I was hearing the hidden message in I try to get down there every day.
Right.
Yeah. Me too, but it sounds like you're making a pretty good fist of it. Yeah.
I mean, it's it's hugely important at any age, but especially my age, every day that I'm upright and moving forward and, not stumbling over and, whatnot, is I can do it. If I can do it today, I can do it tomorrow.
Excellent.
And so, yeah.
Can I ask you about your workout? Do you do a part of the body on each visit, or have you got a mixed routine on each visit for different parts of the body?
I try to do an hour on the elliptical first.
What is that?
The elliptical,
like
trainer,
the cross-dresser trainer.
It's kind of like a stair stepper, but not quite that intense.
Oh, okay.
It simulates running.
Okay. All right. An hour are you on there?
I do an hour.
Right. Okay.
And then on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I do core and upper body, and Tuesday, Thursdays, legs.
Check you out. Okay, yeah, because I was thinking of adopting that sort of routine and working on a particular part of the body, because it's a bit easier then, isn't it? You just stick to certain parts of the gym.
And I'm not trying to become muscle bound or anything. I'm when you get into your 60s, maintaining muscle mass is priority one.
It is, isn't it?
And flexibility and strength.
Yes, the certain parts, the gluteals can come a little bit flabby, can't they? And a
lot of it becomes pretty flabby.
Okay. All right. Well, that's amazing. Thank you for an insight into your routine. And can I ask just one more thing?
Sure.
Listening to podcasts, music, what are you doing when it comes to, do you listen to things, or are you a headphones on or off guy in the gym?
I listen to music in the gym. Generally, it makes an hour on the elliptical go by.
I bet.
Without that, an hour on the elliptical is rather painful. Now there is a big TV in front of me, and I request that they put on TVI's Eshtamanya show. which
you request. That's really good.
Yeah, if it's not on when I get there, they have banks and banks of TVs everywhere.
CNN is often on, isn't it? That's so depressing.
CNN. Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I like TVI's morning show, because it's there's a little bit of news, a little bit of sports, but then it's mostly morning talk show type stuff. And they have the tickers at the bottom, and they're in Portuguese, obviously. And so besides listening to music, I'm also able to work on my reading skills.
Serious a workout for every part of your being.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, then news tickers are great for learning to read Portuguese, or at least for me. So I'm a former journalist, a former journalism professor.
Yeah.
And news is very similar worldwide in terms of the way things are expressed.
Mm.
And so the news tickers are very familiar.
Yeah.
And it just helps me learn new vocabulary. It works the old brain muscle.
Very good. Okay, I was going to ask you. We've got to get Jackie onto the screen. I was going to ask you why it is that the World Economic Forum seems to be everywhere on the screens at the moment. I don't know. I mean, it's not like they're elected or anything like that, but they just seem to have found a place, squeezed themselves into our consciousness on screens in the cafe I was in yesterday. I mean, how's Klaus managed to do that? Anyway, that's another chat for another time, I think. Let's give her a nice big round of applause and welcome Jackie from Xat Sports Group.
Hi, good morning.
Oh, good morning to you, Jackie. How are you this morning?
I'm very well, thank you. An hour on the elliptical is so impressive.
It is,
wow, that is amazing. Like, I go on the Stairmaster, which I think hits a lot of things at once. I'm a big Stairmaster, and they're hard to find now because they don't make the old-fashioned Stairmasters. So I go to a gym that has this old, dusty Stairmaster in a corner, and nobody's ever on it. So it's great.
Well, for a moment, Jackie, and forgive me, I thought a Stairmaster was what old folks have to get up and down the stairs. That's not what you're talking about, is it?
No, it's the old school machine that I think it's the best. It's a best machine. They've done versions of it that are not as steep and they're just not as intense as the old Stairmaster that's collecting dust in the back of the gym.
Interesting, but it sounds like the Portuguese have moved on from that machine, and you're just the eccentric American lady who asked for it to be just plugged in and switched on.
I actually joined my gym because they had an old school Stairmaster. The Mera Gym, they didn't have it, so I was like, I'll just go to the local yokel gym because they have it in a corner, forgotten.
Why don't you just ask to have Space Invaders put on the monitors and be done with it as well? Well,
it's just one of those things. But it's great for the health, and that leads to what we're going to be talking about on Thursday, which is health.
Nicely done. Nicely done. Yes, we're talking to our great friend Nunu, aren't we, on Thursday? Tell us more about that while I find the screen for that.
Well, one of the things about Nuno, and I've really come to appreciate this, like you may have, because we've heard him speak many times, is that not only does he have an understanding, is he going to bring us to a deeper understanding of the public and private systems and how they work separately, how they work together. I wish I could see that. What are we looking at right here?
Your website.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I didn't have my glasses on. I couldn't see a thing.
It's the name of tomorrow evening's webinar, Healthcare in Portugal Explained. Right.
Yeah, and for an American or anyone, I don't know, who's not familiar with this kind of socialized system, there's we have a bias in the US, I believe, about private and public, and yet in Portugal, there are two systems that are meant to work well together. And for certain things, you go to public. For certain things, you go to private. And when we talk about the private system and why people buy healthcare, it's a lot about jumping the queue. It's not having to wait for, which is a very good public, but you're going to wait. And so one of the things I really appreciate about the private system is you're seeing your doctor and you need to see a dermatologist, and they're like, do you have 20 minutes? Because they're waiting for you right there. And I love that. And the other thing is, my husband had surgery recently, and in Alkabidesh, in the public hospital, but because he was also in the private system, he didn't have to share a room with like 5 to 10 other people. He had a private room and his own bathroom. But he says, Jackie, you should have seen the view I had of the mountains of Sintra in my private room. So
Wow.
he said it has so many advantages to belonging to the private system, because it does work well with the public health system. And as you know, doctors can belong to both.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, your same doctors in both. But to be able to get that extra level of service, because a lot of times we're so anxious about our health care, especially
Sure.
if we're having a problem, and to get that added level of we're not having to wait, things are going to be taken care of immediately. So that's one of the great things. But one of the other things about Nuno that I have come to understand about his expertise is beyond being able to express that and how those two entities work together, and why it is a real advantage to being part of the private system, is that he knows the system so well that he knows which hospitals specialize in issues around the heart, issues around cancer. He knows who are the most prominent doctors. He kind of understands that deeper, more working knowledge of not just how the systems work, but who is in the system as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I find that incredibly helpful.
Yep. So personable. Excuse me. So I might have to speak to him about my the throat. It's so personable and warm and enthusiastic and exceptional, I think, in the insurance world, because those are words you don't often hear when it comes to dealing with insurance companies. You're often dealing with a call center. With Winsurance, his company, they are the very best, I think, of embracing technology and remaining human. And you can actually speak to people, which comes as a great beyond the webinar, of course, Jackie. Anyone who needs insurance products can tend to speak to somebody in the office and be handheld, which is what you want. People coming here don't know about the insurance or the health system here, and the staff over at Winsurance are absolutely fabulous. I'm sure you get that feedback.
We do get that feedback, and it's great that somebody knows their product, but it's even better when they know that with who are the players within the system,
Yeah.
and who to really go to in this crisis or in this situation.
Yeah.
And I think providing that is, I mean, you don't get that. I mean, that's just, people don't, know that deeper level of a
Yes.
system. And that's what you're asking for. And he strikes me as extremely warm and compassionate. And I think that's basically the culture of insurance, that they're trying to, they have that vibe of warmth, caring, and we're going to get you through this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
one of the great things about Portugal, and I tell people, the numbers are always shifting. So sometimes between 12 and 17th. But in the US, we're like 36th, I think. And for the healthcare system, as we're Portugal's between 12 and 17 for their system.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that often to an American, that's usually very shocking.
Yes, yeah, for sure, for sure. We so we'll be in his company tomorrow evening. The other thing to say, of course, people are concerned. We were talking about industrial action earlier on, and some health workers are, not happy about their conditions, and there are some challenges. It's not a perfect system here in Portugal, but I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's all relative, isn't it? It still rates as one of the best in the world, and better than the United States.
It's so, just the level of care you get
Yeah.
is so much. It's such a different experience in the States. But can I just tell you my funny story about the healthcare system? I swear it'll be really quick.
Of course you can. Yeah.
Okay, so I had torn my meniscus, but I had, just the normal health. Every year you have your different doctors, blah, blah, blah. So my last doctor, and I think her name was Dr. Carla Pedro, I think her name was. And at the end of our meeting, I asked her to please look at my last 6 doctors, because it's all online. So she looked at my last 6 doctors and she started to laugh and she says, "That's you." For 6 of my last doctors, they all had the name Pedro. It was either a first or a last name. 6 doctors, all
Wow.
with the name Pedro. I
What does
mean, I
that-
realize I
What's
don't
the
even.
universe trying to tell you, Jackie? That means stone, doesn't it? As well, I think you're rock solid medical advice. I'm going to take from that.
I don't know, but why do I have 6 doctors with Pedro in their name? So
I
it
don't
was
know.
just one of those crazy things.
Yeah.
And she was number 6. So
Wow. Okay. All
I
right.
don't know what that means about the system, that you're
Well,
most likely to be a healthcare worker
well, and
if Pedro's in your
interestingly,
name.
yeah, I've heard that the note taking system isn't that joined up, but clearly you had a comprehensive, almost forensic level of note taking there with your medical history, which is great. Good to hear.
I don't know. I don't know what that was even about. I know that there's a list of names in Portugal, and if you get off the list of names, it costs you to name your child that's off the list. That's why every couple you meet is Luisa Maria.
Right.
And there's, you have to pay to get off the list.
Right.
And so I don't know.
Well, wouldn't
just
it be
was a weird
weird
name.
and spooky if my middle name was Peter as well?
I don't know.
Which it
If
isn't.
you're in the medical profession, I guess. But
All right. Dr. Klein, is your middle name Peter?
It is not.
It's not. Okay, so we can't carry on that coincidence here. Jackie, excellent stuff. And I'm putting the link to the Expats Portugal website here. You can click through there. You can sign up for the webinar for tomorrow night, where Nuno will be talking about the Portuguese health system, both public and private, and all the other professionals who join us on the Dream Team session at 9 as well. Click through to the business directory to see all those fine folks over there. We hit the ground running last Thursday at 9, didn't we, with the Dream Team? Great show, and a good turnout for the Dream Team. And I think we started the year 2024 in style last week. What do you think?
I was surprised. We had a lot of people last week.
Yeah.
And I thought right after the new year we'd have a slow start, but that wasn't what happened. So
yeah, I want to ask you about that as well, because there weren't that many NHR questions. There were some, and I thought the whole session might be dominated by NHR. That may be kind of blowing over. How is it going into the new year? How is interest from your point of view in Portugal? People continuing to get in touch and showing an interest in moving to this fine country?
I think people are of two minds. I think when you look right now on what the journalists are saying, at first it was all this negativity, okay? It's all this negativity, Portugal's dead. And now it seems again to be shifting, where we're getting lots of articles about why it's still a great place to retire.
Yes.
So I'm kind of surprised that the whole media spin has shifted this so fast. Yes. And I think people initially reacted to the negative media spin, and now that it's turning around quickly, because I'll tell you the truth, I didn't even know what an NHR until I was hired at Expats Portugal. And Jerry was like, "Do you have the NHR?" I was like, "I don't know." Me and my husband goes, "I think I filled something out."
Yeah. I'll have to ask Dr. Pedro about that.
I know. I mean, it was like, it wasn't even something on our radar.
Right.
And so
you're not alone in that, are you? You're not alone in that. And then this massive FOMO thing happened, fear of missing out, didn't it? It's like, what is it I haven't got? What are these journalists? If it bleeds, it leads. Our professor of media's here. This is what's happened, isn't it? People got really worried about something they didn't know about 2 weeks before with this NHR thing.
I mean,
they probably weren't even aware of it.
But we didn't actually. We were well on our way in the process of coming here when we learned about the NHR. And it was like, oh, hey, look at this extra cool thing. Yeah. We were committed to, you don't get double taxed, at least, so there's a tax treaty with the United States and you don't get double taxed. There's parameters, you have to follow them. But so we were quite prepared to pay the normal taxes because if you're going to be part of a society, taxes is the price of civilization. And now, am I glad to have the NHR for 10 years? You betcha. I mean, thank you, Portugal.
Yes.
But, now my Lola works, so her NHR, she pays more because she's working, but it's still less than she would. And then state pensions aren't taxed. So my pension from Missouri State University, which isn't that much, it's not taxed. And neither of us are taking Social Security yet. And, if all the strange things Carl and I have going pay off, then
you're gonna be rich, Andy.
Yes.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think when you do start to get Social Security, I think only a portion of that is taxable as well. So, and it's a step thing. So it's people go, oh, I'm going from 30 to 45. No, you're not.
Right.
You're going to be taxed on a portion of your income that's left after you're taxed in the U.S.
Yes.
And I think one of the things about being a U.S. citizen is we're used to being taxed. I mean, that is just, it's our culture. In fact, what's often shocking is that if you live into the next year and then you pass, you're still going to pay taxes after you're deceased for that year. You're like, wait, who knew? They said death and taxes, but you're paying taxes after death.
Well, they better send somebody from the IRS along to do a eulogy, is all I'm saying. You want some value if you're going to be doing that.
It's just the way things go in the US. And we're just used to it.
I think suffice to say then, Jackie, that the emotion of the end of the last year with the NHR and how that got stirred up, and as you said, by news reporters, obviously they want attention and clicks, and that was a good way of getting them. And then that emotion gave way to a little bit more rationality. And I know that the advice you give and Xat Sports Group give is like, okay, run the numbers. Don't just have an emotional reaction to this.
Right, run the numbers.
Talk to the right people about it and find out what's going on. And I think what people did was understandably, they saw this thing. What's going in Portugal? What's disappearing? What am I losing? What am I missing out on? Got engaged with that. And then I think, weeks and months have passed now and people are thinking, okay, well, that sounded bad. But compared to what? What are my other options? I was thinking about Portugal, and there was Ecuador, and there was Panama. And I think people have gone on that little journey, looked at the others, and thought, do you know what? Portugal's still the one for me.
When you do those numbers, think about I was even talking to a cousin of mine last night, and let's say you are paying more in taxes, but you're paying less in your utilities, you're paying less in healthcare, you're paying less in food, everything is less.
Yep.
So even your travel, let's say traveling within the EU, if you're smart, you're only paying 50 euro to go to Paris round trip. So everything is reduced. You are still coming out way ahead, even with the taxes. And I think it's to what degree is your expectation that you're supposed to come out ahead? If you want to stay in the US, personally, this is a personal thing, but just having lower crime and feeling safer for me is a huge win every day.
Excellent stuff. Great note to end on there. Thank you for being here. And what happens on the webinars is, of course, Nuna will talk about the health system. And there'll be questions publicly. Then we turn off the recording and the premium members there get a chance to talk about perhaps more personal things, which can occur when we're talking about health. And then it can be a little bit of a free-for-all, and you can find out how to get to Paris for 50 euros as well. From
You're
Jackie.
smart. If you're smart. I'm never smart enough. I never could plan that well, but I know there are really smart people that can plan a month ahead. So good for them.
Yes. Yeah, I know people like that. Excellent stuff, Jackie. Great to see you. See you tomorrow evening. Looking forward to it. Ciao, ciao.
Bye. Thank you.
There she goes. All right. Now let's keep the applause going, Andy, here. Let's press that button again and bring on Raquel.
Hi, guys.
Oh, goodness. Some rapturous applause for you. Happy New Year, Bono, to you, Raquel of
Hey.
Consulting. How are you?
Good. You?
Yeah, pretty good.
Does
Me
the
and
sound
Andy,
good? Everything okay?
everything is good. All is well. Sometimes you're very loud, I have to say, and
Oh
I don't
yeah.
mean personally. I mean although maybe as well, you get excited about things, about starting a business in Portugal. But sometimes as we say in the trade, sometimes your signal from Qashqai is hot, and it
Oh,
sounds
thank
like it's
you.
quite, it's about in the middle and perfect this morning. So thank you.
Yeah, good, good.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
I'll try to stay in this level.
In the perfect zone there. Well, yes, a happy new year to you.
Happy New Year.
Funnily enough, I did ask you if we could talk about green receipts and the difference between being a self, oh, nice mug, a self-employed person, and whether you're on green receipts or whether you start a company, and this social security thing that I've heard about, where if you are on green receipts and you work for a company mainly, the
Oof.
government, like other governments around the world, look at look at that arrangement, and they say, hold on a minute, this person isn't really self-employed. This person appears to be working for
Exactly.
a company all
Mhm.
year. What we're going to do is ask that company for their social security contribution. Have you heard about this? This is going on.
That's true. And that is a means because in the past, hiring someone through green receipts and not as an employee was a way for a lot of companies to escape the payment of Social Security,
Yeah,
IRS, vacations, Christmas bonus, medical insurance, all of that, accidents, policies of insurances. So it was a way to escape all of that. And again, for people maybe from the US, they don't really realize that, but as an employer, you pay 14 months to every worker,
hmm,
and you have to give at least 22 days vacation. That means people will work 11 months out of the year and you're paying them 14. So it's a lot.
yes,
And on top of that is Social Security and then the insurances, the mandatory insurances, and so forth. So a lot of people, what they started to do, a lot of companies was hiring people through green receipts, like freelancing. But if that freelancer only has that company as a client, then that means that in reality, they should be employees for that company, because if they're, if that's their only client, it means that their sole work is for that company. And if that's the case, then that person should be an employee and not in green receipts, because in green receipts, you're supposed to have multiple clients. It's something that you're a freelancer, but you work for several entities and companies.
yeah,
When that's not the case, what happens is for the following year, you get slapped with a 10% bill from Social Security regarding the payments of the former year. And this is not only scary because, of course, 10%, it can be a lot, but it's even scarier for companies because you don't necessarily know that you're the only client of that freelancer. If that
uh,
freelancer doesn't come clean with you and says, this is, you guys are my only client, I don't work for anyone else but you, the company may not even know, right?
of
And then
course, yes, yeah.
the
And then
following year,
the government rocks up with a demand for social security for that person,
yeah,
and that could sour the relationship, of course,
of
couldn't it?
course, of
Between
course,
the client and the company.
yeah.
I think the relationship with the government was already sour,
Well,
but
that always is.
it doesn't help to suddenly have that. No. So, what
Yeah.
would you recommend to people to come clean early on and say, look, I might, if you're my only client, you might get the social security bill. I
Yeah.
mean,
Come clean. And I always say, if you come from a place of truth, it's very hard to attack you in any way, because
yeah,
sometimes you may not know what you don't know. But if you're not trying to mislead a system or misleading people, then it's very hard to attack you, because it's just, okay, I didn't know any better. But that's one thing. Now, to know that, and this is what happened with a lot of companies. So don't feel sorry for a lot of companies, because they knew that this was the case and they were trying to save. And maybe sometimes it's even worth it to pay 10% and to not pay like Christmas
ah,
bonus, vacations bonus, and all of that. So
yeah,
in the majority of cases, these were known to the companies, but they still preferred, and let's not forget the fact that you can it's not that easy to fire someone in the Portuguese system. Whereas if you're a freelancer, it's just a service contract. So you just say, bye-bye, I don't want to work with you anymore. Of course,
month to
depends
month.
on the underlying contract, but there's no employment connection. So it's very easy to let that person go. So I would say, try to frame the activity in truth. If you're only working for a given company, and if you don't plan on having any other clients, try to see if it's not better to actually be an employee for that company. Maybe the company even wants that because of whatever, because maybe they want to grow, or maybe they have other employees and it makes no difference to them. So I think always come from a place of truth.
Yep. Good advice. And the other option, of course, for that person who's doing green receipts, and it's a process that me and Mrs. M are going through now, is to become a company yourself. So you don't find yourself in that position of being perhaps the only client of a particular company. What would you say about that? I mean, that is the option, isn't it? It's a big step to take, going from green receipts to starting a company. But there are advantages of doing that, of course, aren't there? Especially if you want to grow something big. In the long term, Raquel, if you've got aspirations to have a company and to go far with your business, you probably are better off looking at some point from switching from green receipts to being an LDA, right?
Look, I did it right off the bat, and I could have gone the freelancing way because it's services and such. And right off the bat, I created a company exactly because of the growth mindset and the corporation mindset. The fact that you have a structure, an entity, independent of you, because you're just the shareholder or you're just a CEO, but that's a structure right there. It has its own NIF, its own bank account, its own name, its own address. And it's, for me, it's also a matter of positioning with clients. I think it's always different to handle a company than it is to handle a freelancer. And of course, there's advantages and disadvantages to both models. The proximity thing that you have with a freelancer may be advantageous, of course, if that's a good reason to hire that person. But for me, it was alongside that, it was a matter of flexibility in managing the financial part and the tax part in the end, although it's illegal to plan financially for the tax in Portugal. So we cannot say that we're planning any tax things, but
you're not even allowed to think about it if you get caught thinking about that.
And I did not think about any of that.
Right, okay. Well said.
No.
Yes.
But it's the fact that we can, there's flexibilities because there's insurances that you can pay through the company because they do count as an expense for the company. There's meal allowances. There's all sorts of things that you can pay through the company. And of course, when it's a cost for the company, you're paying before paying tax and before paying Social Security. So when I always say, when you pay out of your own pocket, in order for the money to get to your own pocket, it's already been taxed. It's already had Social Security, and then you're paying with what's left. When you reverse this and you have a company and you pay through the company, you're paying all of this before tax and before Social Security, and it all counts as an expense. So it's deducting to the profit. It's deducting to the fact that whatever it's left, you're going to pay tax on. Okay. So it's a big shift.
Thank you very much for that. Now, if over on our GMP VIP platform, I was looking at Antonio Barbosa's 24 must things to do in Portugal. And one of the reasons to be over there is to find out about your guide. Actually, he's been very busy, Antonio. He's got that guide for us to 24 things that you must do, the must-do things in Portugal for 2024. And as a Portuguese citizen, how can you pass the citizenship test there? So there's some information on that. And then if we click through to the classroom, we see the wonderful course that you created, where you go into greater detail about the various types of company and the pros and cons of doing so. So that's over there for GMP VIPs on gmpvip.com. Thank you for sorting that out for us. It's a great resource to people. If you have any questions about business, this is the session in this time of the month and this time this week to ask Raquel, and we'll have a young entrepreneur whose experience we can call upon as well. Stephen Whyte will be joining us a little bit later on. Andy, if you've got any business questions, chuck them in. The other thing we might ask you about is how was it? When was it that the Portuguese started getting paid 14 months of the year. Because to me, I'm thinking, so how might that have happened? I'm guessing it might have been an election year, and the government said, we've got a great manifesto idea here. If we get voted, you're going to get 2 extra months' pay. And it was a landslide victory, funnily enough, for that particular political party. Is that how it happened?
I don't know the specific date. I can look that up for you. I don't know historically what's the specific date, but I know it's shocking, the 14 months. And here I was last Wednesday. I gave a talk to Happy in Lisbon Sisterhood. I don't know if you know, but it was a great talk. It was about creating a business and yada yada yada. And here I was talking how wonderful social security system Portugal has, because if you want to become a mother, you have like 5 months maternity leave. And then, trying to shock the US people over there. It was all women trying to shock, saying we're much better than you because you do not have any paid maternity leave. And here comes someone from like Belgium or Netherlands. Oh, we have 1.5 years. Oh, we have 2 years. I was like,
somebody in Sweden says, "Oh yeah, you get 10 years maternity leave in Sweden." Yeah, it's all relative, isn't it? As we were saying.
Exactly. So relative, and I know this shocks a lot of, especially Americans. And there's another specific thing. This week was like a great week in terms of business for me. I registered a whole bunch of freelancers, and we go online and we have sessions where I help people register their freelancer. And this was a great week because there was a lot of business in there. And it's funny because I had UK clients, and they were shocked with the VAT, because apparently in the UK you're exempt from paying VAT until like 85K in income or whatever. Yeah. And in Portugal it's like 1,300, 13,000.
Let's go.
So they were, and in one case it was even like, I had a client where they were like employees now, and now they had to go to a green receipt or a freelancing system where they weren't exempt from VAT because they were above the threshold. And so now the bill that they gave to their formal employee, it has to be the same, but then they have to pay the VAT, so they're losing 23%. So these issues with VAT and tax and stuff, it's very different from country to country. So you really do have to check, and check what the conditions are in Portugal, because sometimes it can be really, really different.
Yeah, and it can all add up. Yeah, it can add up as well, and create quite a dismal picture unless you know the official workarounds for these things, which are not always obvious. So we have a link to an article in the Portugal News. We'll come back to a few comments in just a moment, but that's the link to this article. Not about trainers. That's just the advertising that's come up for some reason. But in the Portugal News, the OECD is describing green receipts as an innovative strategy. You may find that of interest, anyone who's working that system. And if you want to talk to Raquel about starting, or the pros and cons of starting a company instead of paying or claiming your client's fee through the green receipts, you can talk to Raquel at Lighthouse Consulting about that, and we'll make sure we have the details for you to do that. Let's go back to a few comments, and I think Doug needs a hug. Andy in the Algarve. Did you hear the thunder and lightning last night, or were you spark out?
I was pretty much out, but I did wake up briefly to the rain.
Yeah.
Thunder and lightning is something that, being from the Midwest, it's just dramatic and all the time. And got here, and the dramatic weather here is just so mild.
I said that last night, didn't I? I said that to Christina. Are you feeling the wind is a little bit unsettled? And she kind of looked at me and like, what? I'm from Massachusetts. Call this wind, call this rain. No, I am not unsettled. I've only got one layer on. Thank you very much. It's like, I felt a bit silly.
Yeah. I was in shirt sleeves yesterday, and the Portuguese typically are bundled up in their puffy coats
with the scarf.
And
with everything.
I'm from the land of tornadoes. And where you get woken up in the night by a siren and you have to go to the basement and huddle because you know.
Your
Yeah.
roof will explode out of your
No,
head.
isn't that interesting, the difference then between where you're from and Portugal? When a siren goes off here, it's lunchtime.
Yeah.
Or 12, exactly 12.
Yes, isn't that great? Oh, excellent! It's time for lunch. Where Andy, you know, the first time you heard that, Andy, were you looking for the storm cellar?
Well, sure. I mean, you just, now I grew up in the East Coast where it was hurricanes, but,
Yeah.
But yes, I'd had enough experience with the Midwest, having been born there and a lot of family there, that, I knew if the thunderstorm is rolling through and you hear a siren, you take cover.
Yep, interesting. Okay, or here in Portugal, you get your coat and go for lunch. Excellent. Really scary thunderstorms, gales, and torrential. Actually, on a serious note, it is a test often of the fire alarm from the local bomberos, which might be midday or 1 o'clock, but that happens to often signal lunchtime as well. So, yeah, on a serious note, if you hear it being tested daily, and then if it goes off at a different time of day, there probably is an emergency and the bomberos are being summoned. But it's bringing the community's attention to, like, be careful out there on the roads because there might be a lot of emergency traffic moving around. However, yeah, a hug for Doug, because a Doug hug, really scary thunderstorms, gales and torrential rain here in the Algarve. He's from Wales as well, bear in mind. Whilst we need rain to fill up the barrages down here, not all in one day, please. And I think he actually got quite scared last night. Klein also had the Instabal had a bon dia tours from you, Colleen. Lovely to see you here. First high winds, lightning, thunderstorm last night in Stoops. Kind of loved it, she says, and taking her first train ride, because we're talking about public transport, on Friday to Pal. Where's Pal then? Is that some?
Must be Palmela.
Okay. Let us know what PAL stands for there, Colleen. Oh, hold on a minute. Yes, look at you. Palmela, going to Palmela for my first train ride with a friend. What a lovely trip that'll be. A whole 3 to 4 miles away. Baby steps on the trains there. If there's a station or the ticket office, you have to buy a ticket in advance, Colleen. If there's no ticket office, you can step onto the train and the guard on the train will issue you with a ticket. And they're quite handsome, the train guards here, I've noticed. Well, Mrs. M's noticed this rather than me. Very well dressed, very smart, very efficient. I think it's a very respectable job to be a train guard in this country. Yes, Dougie, I don't mind confessing that I was quite scared. Oh, Doug, it was a gale force. Plus thunder and torrential rain all at once. Yes, stair rods of rain. Going back to the health conversation, was at Coimbra Hospital yesterday. Fantastic service. Really great understanding, and intelligent doctors had the same experience at Aveda, where you're from, of course, Andy, last week. We had a little chat when we had a Kaneka, as we like to do when we meet. We'll have a little chat about this health thing. Have you noticed this, Raquel? In the first year here, often the foreigners, the expats arriving in a new country, do have 1 or 2 health issues. I think it's the body's response to being in a new country. And it's not what you're thinking about, is it? You're thinking about retirement and being in the new country and having a great time. You're not thinking about getting ill, obviously. But I think the bodily adjustment happens for people, and things come up, things that have been ignored for years. You notice this with clients, foreigners?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry about the noise. If probably you hear some noise in the background, it's work. There's works all around.
You live next door to a dentist, maybe?
To a mine. Yes, and sometimes, and I was talking about this yesterday, Portugal, and we've talked about the mild weather in Portugal, and that's a great excuse for construction companies to not insulate properly the houses, because it's only the mild weather, so there's not that much cold, it's not that much heat, so we're fine kind of insulating the houses. So you end up being colder or hotter inside your house here than you would be in northern European countries or even the US. And I think that makes a difference. Not only that, but the humidity levels that you may have inside. And I know that's as Portuguese, we've lived with that all our lives. If we have a bit of humidity or a mold, I know it's a no, but we've kind of, no one's really surprised with that. And we kind of live with that all our lives. And we know it's not good, but we just clean it up and we try to mend things and stuff. people in the US or the UK are shocked, like, how can you live like this? And it's as with everything, I wouldn't be scared to hell to know that if a siren starts going off, I have to go hide in the basement. Now that would scare the hell out of me.
Yes.
This doesn't, so it's like everything is relative again. But it has a lot to do with the construction of the houses and the fact that they're not properly insulated, and that we don't live off of AC as much as other countries, because there's not
Yes.
so much a temperature difference, a temperature gap, and that it end up taking a toll. That and the ocean, for anybody living closer, to the interior, Portugal, wherever you are, even if you're in the interior of Portugal, you're still pretty much like almost on the coast of the Atlantic, and that makes also a huge difference.
Yeah, well said. I hadn't seen it quite like that. And your body is your first line of defense. We live in our bodies, don't we? And the body is dealing with this phenomena or phenomenon of damp and cold and a difference that it's not used to. So you might get at least a sniffle or a little bit of a seasonal change in your body and a reaction to it. So be aware of that. I don't want to be a downer and say, you might have some health issues when you arrive, but it is worth considering. And you're absolutely right to point that out, that the housing is very different and can cause, well, if people are assuming certain things, their assumptions might get met with a totally different reality that could have some health implications as well. By Randy, talking of travel, we're off to Guimarães this weekend. 4 of us. Look at this. He's the sort of guy who plans a month ahead. He's a 50 euros to Paris kind of guy. 4 of us for a total. Look at that. Mais barata, pupi mais. 8 euros there on Flixbus. Nice work there by Andy. And how does the 14 months pay work? Does one get a double salary for January and February? You get a Christmas, an extra bonus one in Christmas and in holiday time in the summer, don't you, Raquel?
Yeah, you get an extra salary in the limit date to pay that in the Christmas is like the 15th of December, but usually companies pay together with salary of November. So at the end of the month of November, people get 2 salaries. And I think that's probably the only way to get people in Portugal to buy any gifts for Christmas. Otherwise, nobody would ever have any money to spend. So maybe it's not a socialist thing. Maybe it's like childcare.
Oh, I see. Like the corporations put pressure on the government. Like, no one's got any money to spend at Christmas. You got to sort this out.
And vacation all the same, because if the Portuguese didn't have like an extra, and the vacation subsidy may be paid in January or maybe paid in July or whatever. There's no really rule. It can be like in these 2 ways. And if people didn't have that to fall back on, nobody would go anywhere. So there would be no Portuguese in the touristic zones in Portugal.
It's fascinating. So the holiday companies might have been behind it as well as the marketing people of the corporations. Wow. Green receipts from Pazlabon. Good evening. So what am I talking about? Good evening. Good morning to you. Sorry, I'm still thinking I'm in the Portugal club from last night. Great session. Thanks to everyone who was there. Lovely to meet you, Cordelia, last night on that session. Pazlabon, I need to go back to your earlier comments. Absolutely freezing, 12 degrees here in Spain.
Wait, 12?
Yeah,
that's
right.
Like 53 degrees Fahrenheit.
I was wondering who was going to take an issue with that. Honestly, Pazlabon, what are you like? Remind me again why I'm moving to central Portugal. Well, for those high temperatures in central. I don't have kids, so the dad jokes go over my head. Really? I thought dad jokes were absolutely universal. Here's one to try on you. Mindful dad joke then. Meditation student asks his teacher, am I allowed to send you email? Yes, replied the teacher, but no attachments, please. See, come on, that wouldn't go over your head, would it? And a mindful moment that I forgot earlier on. Dr. Seuss, again, is a kind of it's a kid's book, isn't it? A kid's writer, but a lot of value for all of us with Dr. Seuss. Be who you are and say what you feel, because those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. Pretty good advice there. Thank you for that. And Pazlabon, you had a question. Oh, hibernating till March personally. Bob's in as well, off to Porto today. Oh, and Bob's saying an hour on the elliptical, Andy. I'd much rather walk personally. Gus has helped that effort tremendously. Well, we were talking about the benefits of having a dog, and lots of protein. What is he eating? Why would he be eating more protein because he's got himself a dog? Are they both eating bones or something like that, do you think? WEF is self-appointed egotistical elites who are convinced that they are better than all the rest of the world. In my opinion, says Bob there. And that question from Paz Lebon then about green receipts. Thank you for that. Green receipts thing seems a bit upside down, Raquel. If folk are dependent, are they actually self-employed at all? And I think you made that point, didn't you?
Precisely.
They're not, are they? If they're working for one company on green receipts, they're not really self-employed, are they? And the government knows it.
Precisely. Bingo.
Yeah. Yep, there you go. Colleen, on this matter of getting a bit poorly perhaps in your first year or two as your body adjusts, people arriving have gone through at least a year of high stress. That's before even getting here, of course, with the migration process. And when you finally arrive, you can catch your breath. Your body may now go through the effects, all of that stress after you arrive. That's right. The body catches up, doesn't it? It helps you get here and then says, look, hold on a minute. If you don't mind, I need a little bit of a rest. And if you don't listen, it might give you a reason to rest there. What would you add anything to that, Andy?
Well, I stress management is hugely important all the time, but I found it very important in moving here. It was stressful to get here, and then it was stressful, in that first year.
Yeah.
Not always in a bad way, but you had to be mindful about it because in the very first weeks that I was here, I found myself at times thinking, oh, I need to go to the store to buy something, and found myself momentarily paralyzed by, oh, that means I've got to find this place. I've got to deal with people with a language I don't understand yet. And it took me about 3 months where I no longer had to force myself out the door to do that.
Wow.
It was right now, here I am a year in, it's no problem. I'm speaking to people in rudimentary Portuguese. It's fun. I talked about gamification with you before.
Yes.
And that was one of my ways to relieve the stress of it was, okay, yeah, I'm kind of forcing myself out the door because mentally it's stressful, but at the same time, each time you do it, you learn more, you have a successful experience and on you. And I think people really need to be aware that, even someone like me who's traveled much of the world for decades, waking up in the morning and realizing this is now my home and I have to deal in a way that's not like a tourist, is stress inducing.
Yes, in ways that you might not necessarily know about as well, because you're finding that out, aren't you? Thank you for that insight, Andy. And it's one of those things again, isn't it? You don't know what you don't know, as Raquel said before. And you might not know that. You might not know that's around the corner or in the post. So something to be aware of there. Better to be forewarned is to be forearmed there, I think. So thank you for that insight there. We've got Stephen. Are you staying with us for the rest of the show, Raquel?
Yeah.
Lovely. Oh, wonderful. Okay, so let's give this man a nice big round of applause because we're going to quiz him now. Here he is. And that'll be Mr. Stephen Whyte right there, who joined us on the Portugal Club last night. Great job last night, Stephen. Great to see you again this morning. How are you today?
Yes, good morning. Good morning. I'm doing okay. Woke up with a lot of energy today, and I haven't had a coffee, so I'm a little bit concerned.
Wow, maybe it was just being in the company of the Portugal Club last night that did it.
Possibly.
He's not convinced, is he? Anyway, great to see you here. And one of the things you said last night, I think, and I've been seeing on the internet, so it must be partially true, is you're offering a chance to invest in your company and your efforts as somebody who renovates and helps other people renovate property here in Portugal. A 12% return on investment. And I know you like to talk robustly and transparently. And when we've talked before, and you've talked about your project, cynics and the grumpy have said, "Oh, it's too good to be true." That I don't know how he's going to do that, etc., etc. And of course, we're all grown-ups. We have to do our own due diligence. But I just thought, I will ask you. Who better to ask than the man himself about this and his 12% return? How does it work? I think you used the word guaranteed as well. Could you tell us more about it, Stephen?
Yeah. So right now I have a lot of people that ask me to help them invest, but they don't know where to start or
Yeah.
they don't have the time. Okay. So I started thinking to myself, I enjoy doing what I'm doing. Why provide a program where people can save money and I can put into multiple projects.
Mhm.
So what I do now is I purchase property. So let's say, for example, you had 20,000 that you wanted to put into an investment. I'll say, okay, we'll take that on as a loan. So we call it a hard money loan in Canada. And we would take that up, invest it into property, and we would give you a return annually. So the return is 12%. That 12% return is better than most stocks. It's better than most rental properties. It's better than what a lot of people sometimes can make throughout a year on their investments. But
Right.
what we do is provide something guaranteed. So you are able to leverage either A, against the asset, B, against a company, or against myself.
Okay. All right. And you sound perfectly confident, and you use the word guaranteed quite freely. How does that guarantee work for people? I mean, because
So the
you must get this, mustn't you? With people, people are suspicious, and quite rightly so in a way. They may not know about you, and people should, if they're taking a risk, they should know what they're getting themselves into. So tell us a bit more about yourself and how the guarantee might work.
Okay, so I guess my background, I'll make a long story short. I've been investing in property for about the last 7 years.
Mhm.
I started off in Canada, came over to the UK, started doing some things over there. And then I started to look at markets where people could affordably grow their income. I started thinking about my family, my siblings, where, okay, how do I get them involved in property, even though that they don't have money saved up? And at the time, Portugal, and to be honest, it still is, Portugal is still one of the best places, in my opinion, where you can invest your capital and still get a great return.
Mhm.
You can invest less money and still get a very high return. I'm sure Raquel can vouch for me on this as well too, in regards to the projects that I present. I actually have my website, which is just down below there.
I'll put the link on
You
the
can
screen,
take.
Stephen.
Thank you. You can see on the website, I actually go forward any projects that I either A, don't have the capital for or don't have the time to take on. I post for other people to buy off me. So these are properties that I've had contractors go to and do evaluations. I've physically gone there, or I've had someone go there to do a check for me as well too. We go through the whole process of what your exit strategies could be and how much capital it would cost to get invested in. You have the opportunity to either do that yourself and get a physical return. We don't guarantee a return on that side of things, but we do guarantee a return when you put your capital with that.
Okay. All right. There it is. There's the website. You can schedule a call, download the brochure over at home-propertyinvestment.com. And yeah, nice little website there. The link for that is in the chat. And you were saying it's a good place to invest. Is that your prediction or your insight for 2024? Do you think it's going to continue to be so?
I think I've said this before, and I'll say it again, Carl. I run towards the fire.
That's right. You do say that.
So I'm a person where people, they get annoyed with short-term rentals. So what does that free up? Long-term rentals. What is
Yes.
an issue that we're having in Portugal? Property management.
Yeah.
There's so many places in Portugal that you go to and no one offers property management. If you want to open a business in this or even come in on a D2 visa, there you go.
Yes.
There's one business
Yep.
that you can start right there where you can hire 10 people and get started.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for facing a robust questioning on your product and services. It's always great talking to you. Paul Richards is asking, Stephen, is your guarantee backed by a third party if your company went bust, for example?
It's not guaranteed, but what I do is leverage against that asset. So I'd say about 100% of the projects that I take on were purchased. So let's say, for example, we purchased a property that you can leverage against that asset or put a lien, is what we call it in North America. And pretty much if I don't pay you back, you have the rights to take over that property. I cannot sell that property without your permission. or until you get your money back in complete with your interest on top.
Yep. Superb. Okay, so there you go, Paul. An answer to your question in there. Jackie, the humble crafter's in. Good to see you this morning. What's this? Antonio F. I looked up the artist you recommended. Oh, that was Bordalo too. The great Portuguese artist and grandson, I think, of the first. That's why he's Bordalo too, isn't it? Because his grandfather was a great Portuguese painter as well. You were talking, Stephen, and I'm hoping it's all right, Andy. We had a little bit of a conversation about types of property model that might be interesting for the future. It'd be nice to maybe bring that into the conversation this morning. You were talking, Stephen, about seeing what the opportunity is here in Portugal. There's not much inventory. There's a lot of empty, dilapidated property. There are a lot of properties where people are not quite sure what to do with those properties. It seems one of the trends is houses in multiple occupation. Am I right in saying that? Or was he frozen up? Have we lost him? I think we may have lost Stephen for the time being.
Got me back there?
Oh yeah, we got you back again now. Yeah, houses in multiple occupation. There are more nomads. There are more people who are coming to work doing sort of manual labor jobs who need somewhere to stay as part of their conditions of being in Portugal. Houses in multiple occupation it's a rising trend, is it not?
100%. So we're looking at places that are due for increase. Places like Évora. We're looking at places like Figueira da Foz, Coimbra, or the outskirts of Coimbra, Porto, places where there's high construction demand. So not all the time contractors have the ability to stay in a hotel. So what we do is provide a cheaper option. Yeah. So we'll take, for example, a T8 property, and instead of it being an 8-bedroom and a living room, or even 2 living rooms, what we do is convert them into like 10 or 11 studio suites. So not necessarily where they all have the cooking areas and stuff like that, but they have ensuite bathrooms, they have a changing area, they have a walk-in closet or some form of a closet, and a nice, we make it an affordable area for people to be in, an affordable area for people to live in as well too, while they're working in those areas.
Yeah, amazing. And where the government aren't necessarily providing social housing, it sounds like there is a private opportunity that you're looking into here. Squire of the Shires has spotted it. Sounds like social housing property investment, which can help renovate properties and help communities and get paid back through rentals. I like it, says the Squire. Now, I understand how that would work for younger people and people who are coming over doing manual jobs and they're getting their first foothold in society in Portugal. Traditionally, Stephen, the foreigners, the expats coming over, are a little bit more well-heeled, can we put it, a little bit more wealthy, and they buying their apartment or a Portuguese villa or a new build, one of those sugar cubes. Would this model, could there be a halfway house here where you have a group of fairly wealthy expats coming over and clubbing together to live in some sort of community type living a place of multiple occupation, if not a single building of multiple occupation? Is that something that that you think might have legs?
So I'm actually looking into this. I'm sure my business partners are gonna knock me on the head for this one, but we are looking into something like this in central Portugal. We're starting to notice areas that are in high demand, like Pedrago Grande, where you can purchase property at a low price. Let's say, for example, my most recent purchase, I purchased a 4-bed house with 3 stories for 38,000 euros. We're going to spend around 70 to 75,000 euros in renovations, and we should be able to sell the property for about 250, 240. Okay. Right. This house also has the opportunity to be split into 3 units. So we're going to be setting the house up so that they can live upstairs, they can live in the middle floor, or they can live in the basement.
Yeah. Yes, very interesting.
Properties like this gives people an opportunity to either cash flow as a short-term rental, cash flow as a rental, or have multiple families living inside of the unit.
Very, very interesting. Looking at all these different models and possibilities. Andy, Raquel, anything you'd like to ask or add to this conversation?
I'll say that the model that you just mentioned, Carl, that's something that we discussed. I was thinking this not as necessarily as a business or money-making opportunity, but so some expats, some American expats, my wife and I, for example, would like to have a kind of a co-living arrangement in an urban building with an initial community of other expats. And so the idea I had was, and I've said this isn't about making money, but rather if you had 4 couples, middle class to, higher income, retirement, and say, all right, here's 4 units. Let's renovate this building and this is where you'll live. That's got to go. Now, that's got to go. Now, again, it's how do you make money from that? I'm not sure you do. What happens is 4 couples renovate a building and move into it and own it. And depending on the unit that's, or the building that's renovated, you have a more positive impact on the area you move into than your economic might causing rents to go up.
Yeah. Okay. So what, renovating something that others might not look at,
Right.
or the usual suspects of
in fact, there
investment?
are 3 or 4 that I walk by daily in Evira.
Yeah.
That they're just sitting there. They have signs on them because they're for sale, but they just sit there. And I think to myself, wow, if you got together some folks like on Carl's network or the expatsportugal.com network, where people come together in a community before getting here, and everybody, and say, okay, which four of you couples want to have your own building and live in it and move here together, right, and start that initial community.
Now, this is a conversation we might not have been having 2 years ago, but it looks kind of possible now, doesn't it?
I think it is, because I know that the folks, when we were doing the Expats Portugal thing, what was his high level of service thing, we had this, well, you did the commentating on this, Carl. So there was a group of us and we had Zoom meetings, and we became a little community. And when we all came over here, many of us still stay in touch by various methods.
Wonderful.
So that's why I was wondering if you're getting groups of people together thinking into themselves as a community before they get here, can that feeling be leveraged into different sort of leverage?
Stephen is smiling. I think this might have wings or legs.
Leverage into, here's a building for you.
Yes.
It'll cost you X amount per couple and you'll own it. And
their collective buying power is greater than the sum of the parts, isn't it? Stephen, what do you think?
I was just thinking about when we were talking about last year about starting a cult. This kind of sounds.
Okay, we moved a step forward. All right.
This kind of sounds like a cult.
Yes.
Well, a communal, living situation where, this group of, it is, I guess, in a way, because you're the part of the selling point is that the building, your unit that you will own in this building that you collectively own, it's going to be people that you know. It's not, I'm buying a unit in a building and I don't know my neighbors. It's, I'm buying a unit in a building and I know my neighbors and we're all doing this together.
Yes, it's Communities United Living Together. CULT is the model here. Seriously, though, Stephen, I mean, this is a business arrangement, isn't it? People, 4 couples, 3 couples, 4 couples would have greater buying power by putting their money together. The market is aimed at individual couples and families ordinarily, isn't it? And it's all priced around what that typically that sort of group of people can afford. If 3 or 4 of those types of people get together, suddenly their buying power is increased, and they may even have some sort of business that they start on a D2 opportunity, as you said. Could it work? Is it something that sounds attractive to you, or something you could help facilitate?
Yeah, I think I was actually talking to Raquel about this the other day.
Okay, so she's smiling too.
I was explaining that it's easier to buy a house with 4 people instead of 1. So instead of a down payment being 40,000, for example, for a property, what if everyone just came up with 10 grand? It makes
Yes.
buying a house a hell of a lot cheaper, and you can even put the money together to split it into 4 units.
Yeah.
I actually have a property like this in Velado dos Frades, just outside Nazaré.
Yeah.
It's a house that has been split into 4 units. All it needs is, I'd say, maybe 60,000 euros worth of renovations, and you'll have 4 units that have a nice view of the mountains, has a nice creek in the back, a well. It's in the center of town as well, too. There's opportunities available for this, exactly what you're looking for. It's just about knowing and creating that community of who do you want to live with. Because not all the time, I don't want to live with my siblings, I'll tell you that. So I'm very selective of who I want to be around.
And that's fair enough, of course, you know, and Jack Polly's saying the same thing. I love my friends, but don't want to live with them. And it's not everyone's cup of tea, but some people are better able than others, I think, to live in this communal way. And I suppose what stops them is the other legals and having, you know, open conversations about what do we do if this happens, what do we do if that happens, and how is it put together legally within the Portuguese system. But it doesn't sound impossible from what I'm hearing. Raquel, what do you make of this?
It's an interesting trend, and what's been happening in the last few years in Portugal is, you know, there's a lot of abandoned buildings and like interior villages where people have just gone out and immigrate to other countries, and there's no like young population, and so you have villages that are almost ghost towns. And a trend that I've seen in the last 2 or 3 years is and for, this from Portuguese people and from expats coming in, is they go in, they buy like almost the whole village because it's a very, very low price because it's a ghost town, right? And then they rebuild, and they do exactly what you were talking about here. They build a community of people that want to live together as friends or as family or whatever, especially later in life, where, you know, you want to have support, you want to live surrounded with people, you want to be able to communicate, you don't want the loneliness part. It's very important to be supported and within the community. And I've seen at least 3 or 4 whole villages in the interior of the country being bought, which is good, renovated, and then communities or you know, sets of friends or family members or whatever occupy and live in those areas. And what this means is that you know, they renovate a few, and others they rent out as like Airbnbs or whatever, and that brings a whole new life to the place, because then there's restaurants, and then there's shops, and then there's, you know, everything that comes with living in somewhere, you know, in the middle of anywhere. And so this is an interesting trend, especially when you consider the loneliness and the isolation of people that head off to retirement or that are older, right? And so culturally in Latin cultures, we tend to take care of the elderly. We tend to live with our grandparents. We tend to, you know, we usually in Portugal, we do live with family, and if not in the same house, very close by. And this is an opportunity for people to get back to a sense of community and support and village, like our ancestors did all the time. And I think it's very, very important even to join like kids and grandparents, because there's a lot that they can teach each other. There's a lot of knowledge that can be passed. And so I think we should really rethink the way we live. We live in urban settings, completely detached from one another, not even knowing our neighbors, not even liking our neighbors, to more of a sense of a community. And there's a lot of opportunities in central Portugal and whatever to buy off entire villages and do just that, like create a community.
I love it. And this is what you were talking about, Andy, wasn't it? Is the social aspect of this is important, social impact.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, and for my wife and I, it would be more of an urban thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, there's no reason why this can't be a way to reinvigorate the interior of Portugal, which desperately needs it.
Yeah, and then and we move away from the criticism, don't we, of the foreigners coming over here and buying all the best properties and making it impossible to, hey, they did up that building, which has been stood empty for the last 30 years or something, either in a town or in the countryside, and that's an entirely different, and I would say positive social impact. Stephen, did you want to add something there?
Yeah, no, I'm starting to see a lot more. How do I put this? Like well thought out Portuguese investors. I mean, look at Antonio there. Antonio is one of them. There's tons of Portuguese investors and up and coming people that have invested into property, and now they're creating their own courses to help Portuguese people. I wish I was better speaking at Portuguese. Sometimes I wish I was better speaking at English, but you know, I wish I was able to help more people. As you already know, Carl and Raquel, I've been helping people in Portugal, young couples, invest into their areas where they are renting properties and then they sublet the rooms, for example. So let's say they had a 5-bedroom house that they were only renting for 500 euros. They would rent it out to digital nomads or to construction people for 350 a room. Nice. You know what I mean? So what they're doing is creating a profit out of something that they already have. They're not really doing too much, but maybe spending a little bit of money on some nicer materials inside of the home, better beds, better, kitchen materials. There's a lot that Portuguese people can benefit from, and I don't want them. I really wish that they didn't look at me as a foreigner that is just coming in and buying up everything, because in my opinion, I think I'm trying to help. I'm trying to help these properties that are, having issues, or people that cannot afford to keep these properties running. I help people get rid of those, or I help people get what they need for their properties. I'm not just over here, saying, oh, that's only worth 10 euros. That's all I'll pay for it. Yeah, most of the time, I'm usually paying the asking price.
I totally get that, and people don't know that until they have a conversation with you of this kind. Antonio Barbosa, my first property I purchased in the US and still own it today. It was a 6-family home, and I lived there for a couple of years and building equity to purchase the next multi-family home. Antonio, loving that model. Right, got a couple of minutes left, and we'll have a bit of fun now. But thank you very much. Oh, and thank you very much to you, Andy, to you, Raquel, to you, Stephen. We'll go now, if we may, to the 24 things to do in Portugal in 2024, and it's like an elimination game here. We'll go through the 24 things, and Raquel's at a great advantage here because she's been here all her life and might have done a few of these things.
You never know.
That's right. I mean, I'm really surprised by Portuguese people I speak to. I say I live in São Martinho de Porto. Have you been there? They, no, I've heard it's really nice. What? Okay,
it's too far away.
That's right. It's an hour from Lisbon. There's no way we're going there. Okay, so thank you very much for this guide at Infinite Solutions, Antonio. There's a link to it from GMP VIP. Number 1, then, escape. Oh, hold on a minute. No, I've skipped a few. Delve into the history of Belém. Andy, have you been to Belém?
I have not.
He's eliminated already. Stephen, have you been to Belém?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you're through to the next round. Raquel, have you been?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, right. I have.
Sorry, Andy, that was swift. Okay, the Douro Valley. Raquel, have you been to the Douro?
Yeah.
She's through. Stephen, have you been to the Douro? Yes, he's through as well. I'm not. I haven't been to the Douro, so I'm out on this. It's just down to Raquel and Stephen now. Onward to escape to gorgeous Sintra. Have you been to Sintra, Raquel? I think you might have been.
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah.
What about you, Stephen?
I love Sintra.
Okay, he's still in the game. He's still in the game here. He's doing well against a native Portuguese person. This could make all the difference, having said that. Take the thermal waters at Vidago Palace. What? Where? What is this? Raquel, have you been there? Do you know what it is?
I do, and I have. I was a child, but that counts, right? So,
it does count. You're definitely through. I'm wondering, Douro, thank you very much for that pronunciation note there. Stephen? No, he hasn't been, not even as a child, and not even in his dreams, because like the rest of us here, apart from Raquel, we don't even know what it is. But thank you very much for that, Antonio. Thanks again, you three, for being on the screen this morning. Been great fun and very informative as usual. Find Stephen on the link that you can see there. Let me put it on the screen one more time. That's home-propertyinvestment.com. Raquel at Lighthouse Consulting. I know if you do a search for Raquel at Lighthouse Consulting, you'll find her. Andy Klein, we need to go and eat curry and film ourselves and other people. Gumper gathering in Caldas Terrenia. We'll see you soon, Mama Anilo. Thanks, everybody, for being here. We'll be here tomorrow with Carl Hyde and Veronica from the Algarve. Take care. Bye for now. And have a great day. Ciao, ciao, folks. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow. Até amanhã.
Bom dia, Portugal! In Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GMP morning show. Featured guests will come and they will blow your mind. The audience will do so in kind. The little vanity mixed with some insanity on the morning show with GMP.
Good morning, Portugal, and I'd like to welcome you to another fantastic day.
Hey, Gumpers.